In this chapter, we will discuss how the English system of writing developed and the reason why so many words in English are not spelled the way they are pronounced. We will also consider some techniques teachers can use to help students take a scientific approach to spelling. Orthography is a general term which refers to all aspects of writing. Our focus in this chapter will be on spelling.
Part 1. A brief history of writing.
The first known system of writing was developed in Mesopotamia around 3300 BC by Sumerians. Cuneiform was a pictographic system of writing in which pictures or symbols were used to represent ideas or objects. Cuneiform, meaning wedge-shaped, consisted of wedges pressed in wet clay and was used for counting trade items. It had the advantage of being recognizable to peoples who spoke different languages. Eventually, people who traded with Sumerians like Babylonians and Assyrians adopted cuneiform as their writing system. Egyptian hieroglyphics, which started to develop around 3200 BC, was mostly used by priests and scribes. Hieroglyphics, or priestly writing, marked the first step toward our current alphabetic writing system because in addition to using symbols to represent ideas, it also contained marks that stood for spoken word sounds. The next big step toward our modern alphabetic writing system came around 900 BC with the Phoenicians, whose use of paper made from papyrus plant allowed for a writing system more complex than anything that could be recorded in wet clay. The Phoenicians created a 22-letter alphabet which only had characters to represent consonant sounds, no vowels. The first people to use letters to represent vowels were the ancient Greeks. The word alphabet comes from the first two Greek letters alpha and beta. The Greek alphabet was based largely on the Phoenician system. Later, the Romans adopted the Greek letters and added the letters V, X, and Y to represent Latin words that did not occur in Greek. The Roman alphabet is the most widely used writing system in the world and is the basis for written English. American luminaries of the English language like Mark Twain and Noah Webster wanted to reform American spelling so that English words would be spelled phonetically, the way they sound. To understand why there is a silent E at the end of the word come, and why the words good and food have the same vowel spelling but are pronounced differently, we need to know that there was a time when those spellings made sense. In the 1500s, England was undergoing a change in the way people spoke. The E in come was originally pronounced as an unstressed vowel.
Come.
And good and food rhymed as in the short poem,
God is great. God is good. We thank him now for our food.
As the pronunciations changed, however, the spelling had become fixed.
Part 2. How students learn. Much of what we perceive to be the standard for teaching language in the status quo is actually quite ineffective. It is not too far-fetched for any American who has gone through public school system to recall lists of vocabulary words that facilitated a very passive teaching and learning method. Unfortunately, research has shown us that this method is outdated and incredibly ineffective. Freeman and Freeman posit that learning, especially learning language, needs to be a product of critical thinking. The English language is so complex that mere memorization of the rules of the language would be counterproductive. This is largely a result of the fact that the language contains so many exceptions that render many of the rules useless in certain situations. Thus, students must be able to recognize certain situations in which the text would be subject to those exceptions. In order for students to be able to function well in actively constructing the English language, they must be able to critically think about the language. Instruction, then, needs to be aimed at this goal. The end result of effective teaching of the English language should be to craft effective problem-solving students. Freeman and Freeman call this the scientific approach to learning. Teachers are encouraged to give students strategies and resources to attack the complexities of spelling and sentence construction. This active approach to learning arms the students with the tools necessary to deconstruct the more difficult texts and to write better when they meet obstacles that they have not previously encountered. A perfect example of problem solving in spelling is the notion of graphotactic knowledge. This concept refers to a person's knowledge of different possible combinations of letters. A 5-letter word scramble can create 120 possible words, yet a person with good problem-solving abilities would not even consider the majority of those possible combinations. After an evaluation of the scramble, the student would automatically recognize the amount of consonants and vowels and would rule out impossible beginnings and endings for the word accordingly. Graphotactic knowledge is used beyond unscrambling words in games, though. It is used internally as a mechanism to construct spellings of words that are more difficult and are not memorized by the individual trying to write them. Critical thinking and the ability to problem solve are fundamental to strong graphotactic knowledge, which is fundamental to good spelling and proper use of the written English language. Part 3. Teaching Strategies.
Sometimes teachers hesitate to take a problem-solving approach to spelling because they have never thought about spelling in this way. For that reason, it would be beneficial for teachers to group similar spelling words together and then try to make generalizations about the conditions under which each spelling occurs. Students can benefit from studying patterns and trying to make these generalizations. For instance, students might notice that when EY, if followed by a consonant in a syllable, the possible spellings are ACE, AI, and EA. Teachers should also point out that the number of words that spell EY with the EA is quite small. This is just one example of the generalizations that can be made. In terms of teaching letter-sound correspondence when it comes to the most popular spellings of words, teachers should instruct students to list a number of words and find patterns. For example, students should list words with syllables that begin with the k sound that are spelled with either C or K and then try to find the pattern. If students collect words in which the k sound is spelled with C or K, they discover a regular pattern. The C spelling is always followed by one of the vowels A, O, or U, or a consonant. The K spelling is always followed by E or I. The instructor should therefore teach that the k sound is spelled with C when a consonant or one of the vowels A, O, or U follows, and it is spelled with a K when an E or an I follows. The preceding examples illustrate only a few ways that teachers can help instruct students when it comes to spelling. The most important lesson is that students are more likely to account for the ways in which different sounds are spelled if they group similar words together, investigate these words, and then make generalizations. Another effective instructional technique is to have students study certain rules that are based on patterns of spelling that signal how vowel sounds are pronounced. When students investigate these rules, they not only become better spellers, but also learn the skills of science and begin to approach language the way linguists do.